Welcome back to How to Be a Better DM, the official podcast of Monsters.rent. I'm Justin Lewis.
And I'm Tanner Weyland.
And we are here to help you tell better stories for yourself and your players as you dungeon master sessions of D&D, Dungeons & Dragons. We'd like to give you some quick announcements. We actually have one before the show, and then after the show, if you want to stick around, we have some more announcements then as well. But first, let's talk about this. Tired of being alone? Are you tired of not having any of your players understand you? Are you tired of never truly belonging? Well, you're in luck. All you need to do is join the Guild. The Guild is a unique and exclusive experience that is only open to Dungeon Masters. It is a full community focused on helping ease your DMing burdens. Want to meet other DMs? Join the Guild. Want to discuss your homebrew ideas with people who would appreciate it instead of just telling your cat? Join the Guild. Want to find a place where all your wildest dreams will come true? Join the Guild. Go to monsters.rent/guild and sign up today for free. Wait, that can't be right. Chuck, can you check this again? Is this supposed to be... What? Oh, they're serious? It's free? Oh, okay. All right. Yes, go to monsters.rent/guild and sign up today for free, even though they are crazy for giving this away for free. Common side effects may include burping, sneezing, laughing, breathing, hearing, listening, tasting, farting, critting, sarcasm, and in extreme cases, explosive diarrhea. Awesome. With that out of the way, we can get into today's show.
Hello and welcome to How to Be a Better DM. I'm Tanner Weyland, and I have my wonderful friend and compatriot, Justin Lewis, here with me. Hey, Justin.
Hi there. How's it going, Tanner?
Oh, it's going so well. Beautiful morning. Excited to talk with you about how to be a better DM. Honestly, I'm excited for today's kind of topic. We actually addressed it a little bit like half a month ago or so about like being excited as a DM. The topic today is a little bit more specific, though. It's about burnout. I think we've all been there, right? Like you set up a time with some friends regularly, like weekly or bi-weekly or who knows what, right? And then you're just planning week after week. And then you suddenly realize, oh, wait, it's not fun anymore. And not only is it not fun, I'm dreading it each time, right? Classic symptoms for being burned out. And so that's what we're going to talk about is how to deal with that. First off, Justin, have you ever felt burnt out on anything or DMing?
Yeah. I mean, running a podcast, I felt burnt out a few times with doing this podcast and then my previous podcast, running sessions as a DM. Also the same thing. It's interesting because, this episode is kind of the second half or the first half of a two-part episode where we talk about DM boredom and how they're both kind of two sides of the same coin for losing excitement as a DM. And in kind of comparing burnout to, burnout with running a podcast or burnout with work, I think part of it is you have this certain expectation and you go a prolonged period of time without reaching that expectation,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like you're expecting some type of return, essentially. But your output is so much that you're like, well, I'm not getting that return. And I only did this output of effort with the idea that I'd get that kind of return of enjoyment or fun or having a good time or whatever, right? And I think that's a real issue, when you're doing a lot and you're not getting enough in return. And that's why I think that, DMing is actually so ripe is maybe the wrong word, but it's so prone to this because of the amount of effort it takes to put in. Because it's like, this whole podcast is based on the idea that like, hey, if you want to do more, then you can, and you'll have a better, DMing experience, or do differently at least, right? And some people take that as being like, oh, I've got to put in more and more effort, and then, and then before they know it, they're burned out, right? And so that's why we got to talk about some tips. And I think that if you're feeling burned out, then the first kind of category of help that you need is first off, just get help from others, you know? Like for example, taking a small break, we're going to talk about it later, but taking a full break is always an option. But at the very least, you could take a small break and be like, hey, Jimmy, you're in my group. I bet you've always wanted to DM. And even if you haven't, could you please DM for like a small little side adventure for a few sessions, like a month or two or something. And guess what? I think most people would be willing to help you out with that. They just need a little bit of time to prepare. And then you can have that break that you've kind of been looking for,
Yeah. Actually, that tip, you just sparked something inside of me. That tip is, I think, possibly a really good tip as well for player management, maybe. So if you have players who maybe are a little bit rambunctious, and I think that it might be best for me to explain my situation. So I have 7 players at the table.
That's a
recently, lot. Yeah, it is a lot. Recently, I've noticed this trend of I'm working with these people who are kind of right in front of me, because our table's really long, right? And I sit on one side. So I'm working with people on one side of me, and then people in the back, they're kind of having their own conversation, and it goes pretty off the rails. It gets loud and stuff.
Yeah.
So add that to the fact that we just got into Waterdeep. Like, they just reached Waterdeep. This is the first time in the campaign that they're in a big city. So what you just sparked this idea in me is I'm actually going to say, hey guys, we are in a big city now. And just like happens in a lot of TV shows, I'm thinking about Avatar. Big cities often have like side quests or mini episodes or things like that, right? So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each of them, and I'm going to say, hey, would each of you prepare a session or like a side quest inside the city, right? It doesn't have to be, in fact, I'd probably prefer it not to touch on the main campaign, but just some sort of side quest that everyone can participate in and have fun and stuff like that. So I think that particular tip, asking the players to sub in, I think that is really valuable for many, many reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of the gold of the matter. And I found this out in a lot of my life, and it's not only true for Burnout, but if you're having issues, asking for help, it's a huge thing. Like, my wife did really well with asking her professors for help in college. That's something I didn't do as well at. And I think she really benefited in ways that I could have, And it's true for DMing too, because it's like, hey, if you're feeling burned out, or if you're feeling like, hey, we need to shake things up, asking others to sit in the DM chair for a bit, that's great. And even if you are teaching them a bit about DMing, with all the tips you've gotten from our podcast and everything else, then teaching someone else is always a good way to kind of freshen up your own approach too,
Yeah. I'd also add,
please,
just real quick, you don't have to wait till you're feeling burnt out to ask for help. In fact, it's probably better to ask before these symptoms set in, so that way you can kind of maintain your energy, calm down, take a break, allow someone else to step in, or share your excitement with them and allow them to kind of reflect it back on you and kind of create this positive loop. So if you're starting to feel like the very beginnings of DM burnout, that's when you need to ask for help, rather than when you're pulling your hair out and you don't want to play D&D anymore.
Exactly. I think that's super important, because if we, I like the term burnout, because it kind of, in my mind, it makes me think of like a car or a machine that is just being run and run and run and pedal to the metal for so long, and it's not being serviced, it's not taking a break, it's not doing any of these things that will make it so that it doesn't burn out. And then even if it does, and then once it starts smelling of smoke, if you bring it in, then it's well, you're looking for a much longer repair time, So it's just better to, take these breaks, change things up, get help along the way, and then hopefully you'll never actually need, to take a really big break, right?
Yeah, that's an excellent analogy.
Yeah. And in terms of getting help, I think you can also get help from other DMs on the internet, right? Like if you're writing your own content a lot, or if you're doing a huge campaign, the kind that like gives you a lot of info, but you kind of need to you need to know everything, direct the every little thing, and set up events, then that might be kind of frustrating, or not even frustrating, but just more like a bigger load for you. And so I would really recommend, looking online, like on the DMs Guild or elsewhere for like little one shots or multi-session campaigns, kind of like what you're talking about with your players. But like looking online, like if you still want to DM and none of your players, they've already played, DM themselves, you can always look online for content that other people have written very well, very concisely, so that you don't need to, pull your hair out when running a session,
And there's nothing wrong with, unless you're doing a paid game, there's nothing wrong with stealing IP from movies, TVs, and TV shows and books. Like, if you can't think of what to do, then have your players enter a town called Gross Spicely, where they meet a young farm boy named Buke, who has these special abilities, and he needs to join the Brusmelian, like whatever it is. Like your players are gonna laugh, because they're gonna be like, oh, that's the thing from that one thing, and they're just gonna enjoy it, and you'll save yourself some time.
Exactly. There's no problem when you're just having a friend's game and it's supposed to be first and foremost fun. Yeah, any trick that you have to make your time easier, that's worth it.
And I would even
right?
say it might even be cool to have them see like, oh, Harry Potter's gonna fight Smeagol for some reason. Like, who knows? I don't know.
Exactly. I know you are all creative people, but you're also people who sometimes need a change up, and that will help you avoid burnout. Also, if you're ever like, because a big part of this tip is, taking some of the load off yourself. I think that when I prepare sessions, there are certain issues, either with my players or with the campaign itself, where I'm like, oh, I want to make this good, but I don't know how. And so I spend forever stewing, and then only sometimes does it come out to be a really good answer. The other times it's just an okay answer, and then I still am thinking about it all the time. If you have certain online communities, like Reddit or some other places where you can ask for advice, having a third party, perspective, an outsider viewpoint, a lot of times they can provide great advice for an issue that you thought was super hard, but then they with their experience, they're like, oh yeah, just do this. And then that's help as well, right?
Yeah. I actually have two examples of this. So one, I don't know if you remember, Tanner, but I was preparing my one-shot Escape from Hungreth Prison. And it's kind of this prison escape one-shot, and I was struggling with it because I was like, yeah, does this make sense? And I sent it to Tanner, and he asked one question. I don't remember what it was, but it like simplified the process and streamlined the whole storyline. It was extremely helpful because I think my issue was I was like, okay, I'm going to have the players come in the prison, and then like they have to like kind of get a sense for how things work in the prison, and then something external happens that allows them to have this opportunity to escape. And I think the question you posed was like something along the lines of, why do they need to like know about the prison? And I was like, oh my gosh, it just took like this whole chunk out that I didn't need. And in doing the one shot, lately, it's made it a lot better. And my second example is actually just like yesterday, in the last few days, a buddy of mine, he's been working on this homebrew world, which is super, super fascinating. I would share it, but like I don't want to spoil his, because he's actually thinking about putting it up on DM's Guild. But he's like, yeah, just read it, like give me some pointers or whatever. Most of what I said was, this is cool, and from a DM's perspective, even hearing that or hearing like, yeah, maybe tweak this, it just allows you to kind of get some of that fire back in your step and feel excited about what you're making. Because we're all self-conscious and we're like, is this really good? And then you send it out and someone's like, yeah, like, I love how this could be this. And you're like, I didn't even think about that. That's super cool,
I know, it's true. Like, I can't stress enough that like that Beatles song, we get by with a little help from our friends. It's very true. And I think that that's probably one of the big ways to avoid burnout. Another way that I'd recommend, aside from getting help in general, is simplifying, right? I think that when you kind of overcomplicate things sometimes, then you need moments of going back to the basics to help you kind of get your feet back under you, to appreciate why you're doing it in the first place. Like for example, let's say that you're in the middle of a dungeon and it's just fight after fight after fight, and you personally aren't a DM that is all that excited about fighting, and you just haven't had a lot of that kind of creative goofiness that a lot of people look for in a campaign, which happens all the time, like in a town setting. And so what do you do then? It's like, well, you can keep pushing through, certainly, or, you can go back to the basics. You can find a way within the dungeon, or, have the players do like a side dream, series of sessions, or who knows what, right? Just to get back to what you love, and almost like take a break from just putting the pedal to the metal on something that kind of drains you week after week,
Yeah, I completely agree. And, it doesn't even need to be like a side dream. I think flashbacks are severely underused in the D&D world, especially because in most cases, a lot of adventurers have been together for a long time, and I don't know. And there's nothing wrong with playing out parts of one of your players' backstories. I excuse me. I also like the idea of changing up sessions. So like shortening them, maybe making them longer, maybe, putting them in different places, putting them online if you do in person, or vice versa, just kind of changing it up and seeing if that can make your process a little bit easier,
Yeah, I think flexibility is a huge part of this, right? If you're feeling burned out, then being like, hey, what can we change that we haven't changed? Just to change it up for a bit, because, like they say, variety is the spice of life. And so adding some variety to your sessions, that's huge. Like for a personal example, I was running a campaign with some family members of mine, and my wife was she was concerned to how long the sessions were taking, because they take like 3 hours, like 3 or 4 hours. And that kind of just got to me mentally, because I was like, I don't like that she's so frustrated by that. And so while I was initially kind of hesitant, I was like, hey guys, can we keep this to 1.5 hours to 2 hours, each time? And people were like, yeah, that's fine. And I was like, oh, that's great. And then like that switch actually made it a lot better, because I knew that, hey, like she's totally fine with me spending like a couple hours on this. That's absolutely A-okay. And then that mental kind of burden was off me. Whereas other people, maybe you've been doing a bunch of short sessions and you constantly feel like you're just missing a little something. Maybe once a month you have that longer session like you're talking about,
Yeah. I also think with simplifying, one thing that trips me up is the pacing of the story. And I was trying to figure out how to like really phrase this, but in my games, I'm always, and maybe it's because I'm too much of a planner, but I'm always trying to figure out how to make sure what I have prepared lasts the full session. This goes back to what you were saying about shortening sessions possibly. But in having that thought of, I need to make sure I make it interesting for the full 4 hours or whatnot, that thought can be fairly damaging, because you might either speed certain things up that shouldn't be sped up, or you might slow things down. I'm thinking about combat particularly, that if they get slowed down, it's going to make everything way more boring. So I think with pacing, you kind of like, I'm not a horse rider, but the only way I can describe it is when you have horse reins in your hand, and again, I'm not a horse rider, you're not supposed to hold them super tightly, but you're not supposed to let them be super loose. Otherwise, the horse is going to go wherever it wants. So you hold them in kind of this middle area So that way, when you need to add correction, the correction is slight but abrupt and then quick. So that way it corrects the course. So just like driving, you don't drive correcting like this, like moving your hands like 45 degrees. You do like 1 to 2 degrees. So I think with simplification, maybe let go of the reins a little bit, let the story do what it wants to do, and just kind of be along for the ride, adding your little tweaks here and there to make sure it is on an interesting path.
Yeah, exactly. Have a place that you're trying to head towards, and have certain things that you want to happen, but let the journey to those things be pretty flexible. I love that. I think it's very important because the moment that you feel like your entire campaign's on rails, then you know for a fact that the players are going to dislike it. And half of the energy and the and kind of the refreshment that we get out of a campaign is the players showing that appreciation. And so if you just are constantly trying to push for your own agenda instead of kind of letting it flow naturally, you're going to miss out on that. And finally, just to end this topic, I would say the last tip is take a break. I think, what Justin said about, hey, take a break before you feel burned out or get help before you feel burned out. That's absolutely true. But, if you start to smell that smoke, so to speak, there is a chance that if you just keep pushing through, then you're going to just burn yourself out so much that you never want to play again, which would suck because you put a lot of time into this. It's something that you really enjoy. It's probably one of the more collaborative kind of fun experiences that people have with their friends, right? D&D is a very unique kind of game situation. And so it's better to actually just be like, hey, you know what? I think I'm done for a sec. Anybody else want to be a DM? Just, for a while, more than just a few sessions. And then that would help you kind of prevent yourself from at least burning out all the way, right?
The term forever DM does not have to be a prison sentence. Like, you can use that, but that doesn't mean you can never be a player. And, excuse me, recently in my campaign, we've had like 2 or 3 weeks where we couldn't play just because schedules couldn't line up. That's okay too. I know that some frustration might be because of schedules not lining up or not getting sessions in when you want to. Again, that kind of goes back to being a little loosey-goosey and rolling with the flow or flowing with the roll, whatever the term is. The second thing I'd just like to add is barring you being a professional dungeon master, like, unless this is your profession, you rely on being a dungeon master to pay the bills. This is just a hobby, right? This is just something you do for fun on the side, and other things will naturally take priority. I think the concept of a balanced life can only really exist in aggregate. You can't look at one particular month and say, oh, I have a balanced life, because if you think about it, we sleep 8 hours a day, theoretically, and we work 8 hours a day, theoretically. So, that's not super balanced considering you have to eat, do all your social responsibilities, have fun, maybe work on improving yourself in the other 8 hours. That's not super balanced. And also, if you think about it, when you go to college, like my brother went to med school. During the time when he was in med school, his life was 100% unbalanced, right? And only now is he kind of regaining some of that balance and picking up other parts of his life. So, like Tanner said, if you do need to step away from D&D or being a DM, that's totally fine. And I would add to that, and I know this is kind of sacrilege being on the How to Be a Better DM podcast, but if you need to step away from Dungeons and Dragons itself and pick up other games, go ahead. Like, I am a big fan of Star Wars, Fantasy Flight, role-playing games. I wish there was kind of a blanket term for it, but, Age of, what is it?
It's Age of Empire, Edge of the Empire. Yeah. Sorry, not Age of Empire. That's a game. Edge of the Empire.
But if you want to play Age of Empires, that's an excellent game too. I highly...
Also great
exactly.
game.
But you see what I mean? Like, there's so many options out there. I'm not saying you should stay away from D&D forever, but if you need to go, like going to a new country, do that. Enjoy it. Have fun. Please come back, because this is a podcast about being a dungeon master, so we want you to listen to us. But also, D&D is way better than every game, depending on how you play. But final thing I just want to say is D&D should not be the highest priority in your life. Like, naturally, family, naturally, other things come first. So if there is unbalance in that area, maybe lean towards other areas than D&D if you need to, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. Taking a break, it could be from gaming. It could be from the type of game that you're so used to. Whatever it is, take that break before it gets too far. And that's going to wrap up our topic for today. Justin, thank you. You've been so helpful with just discussing this topic.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Of course. So for all of you out there, we care about you. We care about your mental, relational, emotional health. And we hope that you're taking care of that and getting the help that you need. And we're going to cover this topic probably in some way or another in the future. But get out there, take a break if necessary. And until next time, let's roll initiative.
Thank you for listening to today's show. We really appreciate your support and your patronage. We have a few more announcements to go over. First,
did you ever fall in love with the library as a kid? It was a place where you could experience 1,000 stories without having to buy 1,000 books. That is what Monsters.rent can do for your D&D campaign. You can rent and swap out as many quality miniature monsters and creatures for your D&D party as you could ever want, without having to buy them. You can rescue villagers from a kobold camp, or lead your party through the fighting forest, or many more adventures. We're coming out with new bundles all the time. Just sign up for our subscription to get access to your own personal library of minis. Go to monsters.rent to find out more. That's the website. Monsters, with an S, .rent. Get your library pass to a world of minis today.
we also wanted to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by Stardust and Dragons. I'm going to let one of the cast of Stardust and Dragons, Christian Hatcher, and his crew tell you a little bit more about it.
This August, a new adventure podcast is coming to a platform near you, filled with action.
Shoot one of the two of them. We can't keep taking hits like that.
Drama.
Everything that she's been doing, everything she's going to do, finally sets in.
And Stardust.
Help! Help! Someone, please!
Find out more about this epic odyssey at stardustanddragons.com, where adventure awaits in the stars.
That's all the announcements we have today. Again, thank you so much for everything you do for us. You make this show possible. Like we said before, we'll be back next week with another great episode, and until then, let's go ahead and roll initiative.